Seconds. And it says we're live.
Okay, great.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Technology for Good Hangout. This is episode 16. We have a guest on the show today, Catherine Reeves. Catherine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tom, for letting me join.
So it says on your lower third there, Catherine, you're from Xerox. Can you tell us a little bit about Xerox and about your role within Xerox?
Mm-hmm. I have been a member of Xerox Corporation for 30 years at the end of this month, and I've seen the company transform. So you probably know us best as the office equipment company of copiers, multifunctional devices, printers. But over the last 3 years, we've evolved to be a services company. Technology is still important, of course, to the services, but the services is the overwhelming portion of our employee base and our market offering base. I work in the Environment, Health, Safety, and Sustainability organization in Xerox. We globally support the corporation both in the workplace aspects and in the product and market offerings aspect. I have the opportunity to work with multiple groups across the corporation for the purpose of communicating internally and externally our value to sustainability to our employees, to the world in general, and to our customers globally.
Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. That's great. Sounds like a very interesting job. You get to see everything the company does.
Yes, and I've seen it evolve and transform over the years. And the interesting thing is we're so used to telling the sustainability story from the technology perspective. And now our sustainability value proposition really grows exponentially now that we're in services such as transportation, healthcare, business process management. The sustainability stories that are possible are greater now than ever before because of the expansion of our business, both in the type of offering and in our geographical scope, which also has increased to encompass 180 countries around the world.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. We'll head into the stories now, and as always, I like to start with a story around climate and kind of setting a bit of context for why I do this show. And this week I'm changing it slightly. I'm going to start with a climate story, but I'm following up with another 2 climate stories. So we're going to have 3 this week, and I'll just power through them really quickly. The first was this really big story, got a lot of headlines about the fact that the Western Antarctic ice sheet collapse has already begun, scientists warned. 2 separate studies came out during the week, and they got a lot of publicity. And I think unfairly, in fact, because I think a lot of headline grabbing was done and scare stories put out about this unnecessarily. Sure, the ice sheet has started to collapse. It is irreversible. It is going to collapse. It is going to raise the sea levels by about 10 feet, which is enormous. It will have incredible implications for the planet. But it's going to happen over a period of between 200 and 800 years. So somewhere between 200 years and 1,000 years time, this is going to happen. So it's not like it's going to happen in our lifetime. So when I see headlines like this grabbing attention, I think it scares people. And then what it does is it discredits scientists when it doesn't actually happen, because people go, oh, there's another scare story coming from the scientists, and look, nothing happened. So I really think that this one was communicated poorly. Having said that, other stories that came out this week were 2 related stories. Last month, April, was the 2nd warmest April ever recorded on the planet. And you can see from the maps there, all over Northern Europe and Russia, and over places like Alaska, etc., it was much, much warmer. In North America, it wasn't as warm as typical, but for most of the rest of the planet, it was warmer. And this led to here, the extreme wildfires that we saw striking Southern California hard this week. And I was saying to Catherine earlier before the show started, I have friends living in San Diego who let me know on Wednesday that they had to be evacuated because there were fires in their area. And in California, we've had an extreme drought situation now for over a year. Normally in California, you have a fire season every October, and then the rains come in November, and the fire season goes away until the following October. But this last year, in November, there was no rain, and as a result, and there has been almost no rain between November and now. So now we're getting the fire season, which normally starts in October, happening now in May, and likely to continue through until at least November, and hopefully by November we'll start to get some rain. Catherine, you've seen some of these stories. What's your take on this?
And I've lived those climate change events, and my wish would be that people would realize that sustainability, whether you connect it or not to greenhouse gas emissions, sustainability has value for those of us living here today. And I think quite frequently, Tom, as you said, they use the scare tactic and the climate change and the risk that is projected years out in the future. And I wish that people would realize that sustainability has value for those of us living here today. I wish they realized that the environmental impacts are really waste, just like inventory overproduction. And if we eliminate those risks, we improve our way of life, our work, and reduce our costs. And then we realize the short-term benefits. And yet, too much, the sustainability is touted as something we do for future generations. While that's good and that's true, it's something that we do here and now to improve the way we work and simplify.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, some sustainability-related stories now, because I came across some interesting stories this week. One of them was this one on Grist, talking about college students designing a home with $2 energy bills. Mm-hmm. So, this means that this family home, apparently it's 1,925 square feet. It's got 3 bedrooms, and you can run it on $2 worth of energy. That's obviously US based. Mm-hmm. $2 worth of energy every month. This was a competition for the US Department of Energy. It's a home student design competition, and it was one of 2 winners in the competition. They reckon it would sell for about $322,000. So you invest a little more money up front, but you get really low electricity bills afterwards, really low consumption. So I thought that was a fascinating story. And then we see things like Microsoft getting back into the home automation game. They had a product, it was a free product, it wasn't for sale product, it was a free product called Home, H-O-H-M, for measuring your electrical consumption. And now they've partnered with this company called Insteon to produce apps for this Insteon home energy network. So it looks like it'll be interesting. You need Windows-based devices to run it on, though. So I don't have any Windows-based devices, so I won't be able to run it. But for those who have, it looks like it'll be a nice little application if you have this Insteon home energy network. It's one of these things that... Go on, Catherine.
I was just going to say, Tom, these last 2 stories are great. I think I see 2 themes here. One is that sustainability can create a competitive advantage for a company. So we need to think of it more as the opportunity rather than the downside. And the story from Syracuse, which is just an hour away from where I'm located in Rochester, New York, it's another message there that to the millennial generation, our future employees, the people in power and not so long, really care about sustainability, and they want to work for a company that is sustainable, and they want to see it in their communities, and they're doing it. Another
Yeah,
example.
yeah, no, I think you're right. I think far more it's the younger generation, the millennials, who get this and who are actively involved in doing something about it. It's great to see them with that student design competition, for example, and lots of other things like that. You can see uh, while while lots of people of our generation are responsible and care a lot about it too. You see far more, I think, of the younger generation because I guess for one thing, they've grown up with the problems that
Absolutely.
us and the generations coming before us have thrown in their lap. It's very much them and their kids who are going to have to deal with it.
That's right.
But no, it's heartening at least to see that happening, to see more younger people getting caring and getting down and doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Other stories I saw. This was an interesting one. I'm not sure if it will ever happen, but it's a way of turning roads and footpaths and parking spaces into gigantic solar panels. Basically, it's a couple who've done a lot of research and come up with a covering for roads that you can embed solar panels into. And then the idea would be that all these roadways and parking lots could be turned into basically giant solar farms. Um, I guess I know they mentioned the article as well, the ability to wirelessly charge electric vehicles that are running on these roads at the same time. So I guess it has some potential. They've got a lot of money to drive funding forward, and they're looking to raise another million on Indiegogo. And they seem to have a nice philosophy. I'm not sure it'll ever take off, but it's a nice one to see. Again, people coming up with all kinds of ideas for ways to kind of get our carbon production down. So that's always good. And then, speaking of electric vehicles and batteries and energy and stuff like that, there was this story that's come out of Japan, this Japanese startup called Power Japan Plus, who've come up with this battery, they say, which is just basically built out of carbon. The anode and the cathode in the battery they use carbon instead of lithium or cobalt or nickel metal hydride or lead acid or anything like that. Instead of any of those things, it's a dual carbon battery, which has a lot of advantages. According to PJP, the company, they say it charges 20 times faster. It's more energy dense, so it'll hold more power, and they say it'll last far longer. It'll go through about 3,000 charging cycles, which is longer than most lithium-ion batteries. They're targeting a number of industries with this, including the electric vehicle industry. And of course, because it's made out of carbon, they say it'll be cheaper than lithium-ion batteries as well. So if this comes to be, it would be great if it happens. Color me a little bit skeptical, but if I'm skeptical, it's I think because it's one of these things that sounds too good to be true. A more energy dense battery which charges faster and is cheaper. It kind of ticks all the boxes.
Tom, did
Yep.
they mention the end of life management of it? Because, again, we have to think about the life cycle perspective. So all those front phases that you talked about sound great. Did they mention how you disposition the battery at the end of life?
They do actually. They mentioned that in the article, and according to them as well. It's relatively easy to dispose of at end of life because it's just carbon, which they say it's eminently recyclable as a result. We're not talking any exotic heavy metals like cobalt or nickel or anything like that, or lead acid, which do pose challenges. Lithium ion is better, obviously, because it's fully recyclable. And they say this is as well. So it looks like the end of life will be good if this comes off. So fingers crossed, it's genuine, it's for real, and they do have a product. They say they are putting together a plant in Japan to start manufacturing them, and that they'll be putting out the first 5,000 per month later this year. So, great if that happens. Fingers crossed it does, and things will work out. It sounds very promising, and particularly for the electric vehicle market, who have problems creating cars, apart from the Tesla S, creating cars which can go over 300 miles. So with something like this, if it's a lot more energy dense, which they say it is, and it's cheaper, it could really be the kick that the electric vehicle market needs.
Yeah.
And go on.
I was just going to say another example that if we're going to achieve sustainability, we need innovation. It's not going to be had just by simply recycling and doing the low-bearing fruit, so to speak. It's the innovation. This and the solar panel, the ingenuity and the innovation is going to advance us towards sustainability. And then there's the technical feasibility and the financial feasibility. Are these going to be affordable? The return on investment is going to be really important, because it can't be sustainability at any cost. So it's going to be good to follow this, both from a technical and a financial perspective.
Absolutely. And other stories, I mean, we're speaking about energy. I came across this one from Computer World, talking about ghost servers. And basically ghost servers are servers in data centers which you might have put in there 5 years ago or so, and migrated applications off those servers onto newer servers, and the server is still there, it's still plugged in, it's still consuming electricity, but it's not actually doing anything because, like I say, the apps that are on it have moved to another server. And this might sound like it's not possible, but actually it's far more prevalent than you would think. And the Uptime Institute carried out a study on it, and they reckon that about 20% of all racked IT equipment has no function other than to warm the planet. So they say data centers can do a lot to save themselves power by doing an audit of what they have inside and going and turning off the servers and the equipment, because it's not just servers, that aren't actually doing anything. And they've held a competition on this. And Barclays came up as the top performer in their ranking this time, removing over 9,000 servers last year, and those servers were consuming 2.5 megawatts of power, filling 588 racks. And now the company's power bill has been reduced by $4.5 million by shutting down those servers and removing them from the racks. Sun Life came in second, and it's a fantastic initiative on the Uptime Institute's half, running this and getting those unused servers out of those racks and data centers, because they are just consuming power for no good reason. And it's a simple, it's a real low-hanging fruit project. Anyone can do this. Go through their own data center and do a quick audit, find out what's not running, and just whip it out. It's not difficult, so that's a nice one. And then I saw this story about this company called Urban Engines. And Urban Engines are a company in the city space. So they're a new startup. They've just emerged around combining data and urban mobility. So it's a couple of guys, a former Google exec and a Stanford computer science professor, who've opened an office in San Francisco. And what they're doing basically is they're taking very simple data from ticketing machines and using that to determine where people are in a city transport situation, and they use that to map journeys and show choke points and things like that for cities. So it's very again low-hanging fruit stuff, and because they're just taking that kind of data, it's very easy to roll out and very cheap option. So I can imagine something like this being very important in developing cities. And with more than half the world's population living in cities now, it's extremely important for initiatives like this to bubble up, because in the developing world particularly, you're getting the rise of mega cities. I think the top 10 cities in terms of population now are all in developing countries. So something like this will be a huge help for them to manage the transportation, the movement of people within those cities. And then, Catherine, we have this Xerox story which we touched on last week, and I was hoping you'd comment on because it's a Xerox story, and it's again around moving people. So do you want to jump into that one?
I'd love to, yeah. And I wanted to say that in terms of sustainability and resiliency and adaptation, the one industry sector where there's a lot of opportunity is in transportation. And a number of companies are seeing this, including my own company. When you look at, again, we're a service-led company. And recognizing with the climate change risks that transportation, particularly public transportation, and keeping the cars moving is going to be all important. So the article that Tom mentioned, Xerox entered a research study essentially with the University of Michigan and a number of other companies, particularly automotive companies. Again, so you're seeing the business opportunity as well as the right thing to do. To study the communication vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure. And there's a massive acre size study area that's going to simulate what those roads are like. So Xerox will be working with the university as well as the automotive industry. So you can see the opportunities there of actually installing our devices and our software into these automobiles of the future. So true integration. And when we look at sustainability, a couple of things become important. One is the quantitative approach, which we saw in the data center, understanding what you're using and what can be streamlined. The other is working the value chain linkages. So with the transportation, you see we're working with the university because they provide the think tank, the future generation, and also a third-party objective view. The automotive industry, potentially our next customers, as well as our suppliers. And Xerox already has taken advantage of some of those transportation opportunities like smart parking or easy pass, the idea of simplicity, yet reducing environmental impact. So faster parking space means less gas idling, means less greenhouse gas emission. And of course, that means reduced costs of fuel spend for the consumer, and for a company that's providing these services, revenue opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, you need obviously to make revenue to do this. I mean, you can't be doing it philanthropically and hope to survive in the business world. But having said that, it's a win-win. It's a win for the planet if people are working on sustainability solutions, and it's a win for the company if you're making money from doing so. So it's all good.
Absolutely right.
So another story is staying with transportation for a second. I saw was this one where Google have added public transport data for the UK. Now I know it's been in the US for a long time. But it hasn't been in the UK, so it's great now. In the UK, they have buses, they have trains, they have routes, departures, interchanges, all that kind of thing, and it's all built into now the Google Maps in the UK. It's been in Ireland for a while as well. It's not in Northern Ireland yet for some reason, but that will eventually be added as well. So that's great because data is good. It helps people plan their routes better. But Google as well have this Google robot car, this Google car that they've been trialing. And they've been trialing it around Palo Alto and California. And this journalist, Liz Gans, took a drive in one and wrote up what the experience was like. It's an interesting article. It speaks to very much the future of transportation again. She was in the car while it went on a drive and was driven around in the car by the car, which has got to be a bizarre experience. The car uses LiDAR maps to know where it is at any point in time, and it uses a series of sensors to sensor the environment around itself. It's currently limited to driving around the kind of Palo Alto Mountain View area because it only has LiDAR maps of this area, but you have to suspect it won't be long before they have LiDAR maps of other places as well, seeing as Google have this fleet of cars mapping the streets around the world anyway. So it's a fantastic initiative on Google's part. It's incredible to see what they've done with this. I mean, they've driven these cars. I think it's 700,000 miles now. These cars have driven themselves around that area. They have a fleet of cars. They have around a dozen cars, I think. Yeah, 700,000 total autonomous miles into the project, and they, yeah, you know, for me, I really see this as the future of transportation, because I know there are some people who would say, oh, I'd never let a car drive me. I'm the opposite. I'm absolutely the opposite. I would love to be able to sit into the car and say to the car, take me to wherever I'm going. You know, take me to the city center. You know, or type in a GPS or an address or whatever, and just have the car bring me there. And then I sit back and get out my laptop and start writing emails or start reading news stories or get on the phone and start talking to someone without having to worry that it's illegal to talk to people anymore. You know, because if the car is driving, you know, you don't need to be paying that amount of attention. So it's and you have to suspect. There are collision avoidance mechanisms built into aircraft. So if aircraft are in the same space, they you know, if they're flying towards each other, they will automatically take over and, you know, avoid each other, and the collision will be avoided. And there are collision avoidance systems built into the Google cars as well. So you have to suspect self-driving cars of the future will have these as well. So they will be safer than cars driven by people. So it's, for me, it's a huge win. It's still, you know, several years before anything like this becomes mainstream. There are cost issues, there are regulatory issues, you know, there's all kinds of things to be overcome. So I suspect it's going to be 10 years time before we see these come to pass. But, you know, I for one can't wait.
And think about the world of opportunities that it opens up for the handicap or the physically challenged traveler.
Absolutely.
To get out.
Yeah, you can imagine people who are visually challenged, for example.
Right.
My brother-in-law has had extremely poor eyesight for years, and he depends on his wife to drive him around. Mm-hmm. So if he would love, I'd say, to be able to get into a car and just say to the car, take me to wherever. You know, it makes him far more. It would make him far more independent.
Absolutely.
Another. Speaking of transportation, another cool one I saw was this cartoon. It's a well-known cartoon called The Oatmeal, and it comes out, I think it's weekly. But this particular cartoon is by the cartoonist whose name I've forgotten, and he recently bought a Tesla Model S, and this article or this cartoon is basically a long spiel by him saying why he thinks the Tesla S is the best thing ever. And it's, if you're not familiar with the Tesla S, or you're not familiar with the oatmeal, or even if you are familiar with the Tesla S and are familiar with the oatmeal, it's worthwhile going through, because it's like a little love letter to the Tesla S. It really is. And he talks about all the different aspects of it. And, you know, again, for me, the Tesla S is a phenomenal car, because everyone had been saying for so long that, you know, the chances of getting a mainstream electric car were minimal. There were all kinds of reasons it couldn't happen. And Tesla came out with their sports car first, the Roadster, and showed it was possible to do a production car. And then they came out with the Model S, which was the first car designed from the ground up to be electric. The Roadster wasn't designed from the ground up to be electric because they used a Lotus body, whereas with the Model S they used their own body design, and they used their own everything designed from the bottom up. So it's a hugely impressive car. It is by far the safest car on the road, measured by independent car safety experts. Being an electric car, there's no engine obviously, so there's far less maintenance involved. There was one issue with batteries which Tesla had, and they pushed out overnight an over-the-air update for the software that runs the car. And the following morning, everyone's car was fixed without having to do anything. So the kind of advances that this brings to personal transportation are enormous. And like I said earlier, if this carbon battery proves to be a thing and allows or can be used in cars, we could see far more electric cars coming out at lower price points and be able to be driven further and recharge faster. So the transportation industry looks like it's set for a huge upheaval, and about time too. So on from there, and the next story I came across was this one in the kind of Internet of Things space about robotic bees. Basically, these are tiny little drones or little robots, which they're more fly-like than bee-like in that they've got 2 wings instead of 4, and they. This is a project that's coming out of Harvard University, their Robo-Bees project, and they're basically hoping to make swarms of these little Robo-Bees, and they speculate they could be used, for example, in natural disasters where buildings collapse, because they could put sensors on them to sense breath, for example, and find survivors in buildings. They'd be able to go into nooks and crannies where people couldn't. They say they could use them for looking for gas leaks, for measuring microclimates, conducting military reconnaissance, and all these kind of, so tons of different uses of them. Most of them good. Military reconnaissance, I won't say as good, but most of the other use cases they put forward are good. They talk about as well using them for pollination, and frankly, I hope we don't get to the point where we have to use these to pollinate. I hope we get sense and sort out the colony collapse issue that we have around bees. These little guys are 100 milligrams in weight, so they weigh almost nothing. They're made with carbon fiber. So fascinating to see what uses they'll come up with for these. And the other Internet of Things story that I came across, which was really interesting, was this kind of. It's not a story per se. It's more an essay talking about the different uses of Internet of Things technologies. It's a good little piece where it talks about not using Internet of Things technologies for answering your door without getting up out of your seat. That's not the kind of thing this is talking about. It's talking about ones that will actually make a difference. So talking about climate change, uses of it in climate change. So for example, the Ivanpah solar electric generating system in the California, Nevada area, generating 400 megawatts of electricity, but doing it because it's using Internet of Things connected mirrors, which track the sun's position and constantly adjust themselves to get the maximum sunlight reflecting onto a solar power tower. And it talks about conserving natural resources, conserving water, and the aquifer under the American Great Plains. That's supplying drinking water for 2 million people in the Great Plains in the U.S. But it's slated to last just another 25 years, whereas it would take 100,000 years to replace it. And what they talk about here is this thing called WaterBee, which is a smart irrigation system. It's an Internet of Things thing again. So what it does is it's constantly sensing soil humidity and seeing whether you need to actually irrigate. And if you don't, it doesn't turn on the irrigation machines, or it just turns it on where it's needed. And they're saying they're getting water savings of about 40%. So fascinating use cases there, use cases in health as well and in aging studies. So some nice Internet of Things stories there. We'll power on. I saw in the kind of health area, as I had mentioned, we've mentioned wearables here before on the show, and the fact that different companies have come out with different wearable technologies. I'm wearing a Fitbit Force fitness tracker myself at the moment. I've been wearing it since December. And I quite like it. LG are now jumping into this as well, and LG are bringing out one of these fitness bands as well. But they're also, as well as the fitness band, they're bringing out a set of earphones, and the earphones connect to the fitness band and onto an application on your smartphone. And what the earphones do is they measure your heart rate and your blood oxygen level in real time. So, and they can give you audio status updates of both of those things. So, it's an interesting further development of this kind of space, the kind of self-quantification space. So it's becoming a thing more and more that people have got these kind of devices, and they're using them to track their health and their well-being. And there's a lot more of that going to come this year. And we see also in this same space, Skype's co-founder, Janus Friis, has jumped into this space as well, and he's got a new device that he's going to be bringing out with an application to go with it. This article about it is really interesting. It talks about some of the people they've taken on, and they've recently hired a guy called Drew Conway, and I know Drew. He was with the NSA, interestingly, before he joined some other companies. But he's joined this now, and he's a well-known data scientist. And he's joined the company in February as their head of data. It talks about some of the other people they've hired and where they've come from, and kind of roles they've had in previous organizations. It talks about potential branding for the application as well, based on trademarks that have been registered. So all in all, it's a well-researched article, and it does look seriously like it's currently called Project Florida. It does look like it's going to be a thing, and it looks like that there's going to be basically another player in this space, and it's a fascinating space. It's a space that didn't exist 12 months ago, or barely existed 12 months ago. So, and we're going to see apparently Apple come out later this year with their iOS 8 and their health book application, and potentially some kind of smart device as well, whether it's wrist worn like this one or some other way. Catherine, what do you make of this rise of the fitness tracking and quantification of the self?
I see businesses seeing an opportunity in the aging population. Just like transportation is a big sector, there's another opportunity with business with the aging population. And the other thing, too, is the data-driven decision-making. I mean, we all want it, whether as a consumer, as a business, and it's probably because of the constrained resources, whether it's our own bank account or the natural resources. We want to understand what is scarce and what we want to prioritize our efforts, and these data-driven exercises and analytics allow us to do that. I mean, it's something we've seen within our own business, we use it to sell. We show people what their current state is and what the optimal state could be.
Yeah.
And that is sometimes enough to complete a deal. And we do the same thing within our own workplaces to find those opportunities and improve the way we work, simplify it. So with the health industry, what better way to improve the way you live to add some years to your life, some quality years.
Yeah.
So real appeal.
It gives us all, I guess, as you say, better data to make better decisions about our lives and to track. I'm on crutches at the moment from an operation I had last December, and that was one of the reasons I bought the fitness tracker. It was to track my recuperation. It's a long recuperation, but I'm getting there. I'm able to get further now and put my foot down more. So the good news is it will get better. I'm told it'll take 12 to 18 months, but it'll be a full recovery. So
that's great.
I was afraid I was getting arthritis, and that you don't recover from. That's a lifelong condition. So I'm relieved it's not that, and I'll be making a full recovery.
Smart move. And the other thing, Tim, I was going to say, you see too, at least in this country with health insurance providers, your rate sometimes depends on your health. So most companies, or many companies here, including my own, before the start of the new year, we have a biometric screening, which creates a baseline of what our blood pressure and the other important key factors are. And we suspect in future years, which they'll continue to track that, your rates might be dependent on just how healthy you are, how you've changed from that baseline. So whether you're self-motivated for your own good health or because of the bottom line of what you're going to pay, it's a growing industry.
Yeah, interesting. I remember talking to someone about this before, and they saying that they were getting credits on their health plan if they started using a fitness tracker. It was just that they took possession of it. They didn't even have to share the data or anything like that. It was just to take possession and start using it. So it'll be it'll be fun to watch that space as well. How the insurance industry deals with this. Will they start subsidizing their users, and will they require data sharing? It's going to be a fun place to watch. Speaking of data and sharing, the EFF brought out this great report. I think it was just today it came out. And it talks about, the report is called Who Has Your Back? And it talks about protecting your data from government requests. And it's kind of the post-Snowden world. And we see they've ranked companies, internet companies, based on how good or how well they guard your privacy. And this is a report this isn't the first time they've brought out this report. They've brought it out a couple of times since the Snowden revelations. And what we're seeing is some companies like Facebook, for example, getting 5 stars, Apple getting 5 stars. Who else is there? Microsoft Google. Getting 5 stars as well. Google as well getting 5 stars, very good. Yeah, and Yahoo as well. Some Twitter getting 5 stars as well. Some companies getting 4 and 3 and 2 stars. So if you're online, if you're interested in where your data is and how well it's being protected, this is a good report, well worth checking out. It doesn't just have these kind of stars, but it's a very long report going into a lot of detail on methodologies and all kinds of things like that. So it's well worth checking out, and it's the EFF, so it's trustworthy. 3 more reports or 3 more stories in the kind of miscellaneous space at this point. Samsung and Apple have jumped into the kind of graphene area, and they've started filing patents on graphene products and technologies. So this is going to be huge, obviously, particularly in the mobile space, because it'll allow much thinner and potentially what's the word I'm looking for? Bendy is not the word I want. But
flexible.
Flexible. Thank you. Lost for words there for a second. Flexible phones. So and there's far more as well. I mean, there's a lot of potential work for graphene as well in the battery space. So the race to grab that IP is really hotting up with both Samsung and Apple and Google as well. Amassing arsenals of graphene-related patents, and sorry, this is actually the last story. The next the tab after this is one that's related to this, and this is a story around a thing called code.org, and code.org, if you're unfamiliar, is a site backed by the tech industry, which offers free courses to teach people how to do computer coding, and it's aimed at kids primarily, although anyone can do the courses. But to help get the kids into it, it's got their favorite cartoon characters or games characters. So, for example, there are Angry Birds characters in there, so you can manipulate Angry Birds and try and get them to get the pigs. There's Plants vs. Zombies characters in there as well. There's Animal Crossing characters in there as well. And groups of others, ones that kids will really relate to. And kids get trophies as they proceed through it. So there's a bit of gamification built into it as well. And it's really easy stuff. It's block level coding. You don't have to handwrite the code. You just drag blocks of code in there. And what it does is it teaches kids a number of things. It teaches them logical thinking. It teaches them organization. It teaches them as well, though, something that isn't necessarily obvious, but it teaches them how to fail. Because in a kind of a classroom situation, if kids make a mistake, they're told, no, that's wrong. And that's kind of, it's like a slap on the wrist. But if they're going about this, if they're playing on the computer and teaching themselves coding through these uh, courses, which are primarily self-taught, um, they try something, it doesn't work, and they go, oh, that didn't work, I'll try this. Oh, that didn't work, I'll try this. So they keep failing and keep trying something else, and keep failing, keep trying again. So they're learning that failing is just a natural step in the process of doing things. It's not something that's necessarily bad or wrong. And in fact, everyone fails all the time, and you just go, okay, that didn't work, I'll try something else. So it's an interesting one in that light as well. And my own kids love it. They're heavy into code.org as well. And just yesterday, I tweeted this photograph of my 7-year-old, working away on his laptop there, and winning trophies and coding away and getting Angry Birds landing on pigs. So it's an awesome site. If you have kids, it's really, really good. It's also good because it's built for both students and for teachers, because for teachers it gives you lesson plans, downloadable lesson plans, all done out in PDFs with slides you can create and transparencies you can create and the whole kind of thing. So it runs a full gamut from students to teachers. So it's really good, and it's really easy, and it's really engaging. And as well as that, they've got video tutorials from people like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and another few kind of celebrity technologists in there. So well worth doing. And when you look at how a lot of jobs are going away now through technology, the one area where you constantly see shortages of employees is in coders, people who know how to code. So it's a vital skill for the future. It's one that's not being taught in most schools, or not being taught well. So the ability for kids to self-teach themselves is a really important skill, is really good. Catherine, your thoughts?
I love it. I mean, that is a great example of technology being used to not only educate kids, teach them important life lessons, like you mentioned, that losing is part of learning, and it's an essential part of learning. And also smart from the companies, priming these kids to be the employees of the future, creating great memories and helping them find what they enjoy, so that they can pursue that when they become young adults. Total win-win.
Absolutely. Cool, that's our show for this week. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for your time and your interest, and we'll be back again next week with another show. We'll talk to you then.